How to Save the Amazon by Dom Phillips and contributors has just come out in the United States. Dom Phillips set out to write this book in order to find ways to save the Amazon and the indigenous people who inhabit it. Tragically, Dom and his travel companion, Bruno Pereira, were murdered while searching for answers. In the aftermath, a group of writers took up Dom's partially completed manuscript and committed to finishing it. I'm joined by Andrew Fishman and Tom Phillips, some of the contributors of the book. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Tom, the chapter you worked on is called Regrow and Self-Protect, Indigenous Defenders. Can you talk to me about what the chapter entails?
I was really happy with the chapter that I was selected to write for a couple of reasons. One, the Indigenous activists who I had met during the 10-day search for Dom and Bruno in 2022, it allowed me to go and spend a lot more time with them and to sort of follow through on Dom's reporting on that group and to see how they were growing their work in their territory, the Javari Valley and around Brazil and indeed around South and Latin America. And there was a sort of natural connection between the reporting that Dom had done in the Yanomami territory, which is the biggest indigenous territory in Brazil, in 2018, 2019, and the reporting that I had done on it slightly before that and then slightly after that. So I was able to kind of mesh together his vision for his chapter and the reporting he'd done in that part of Brazil.
Andrew, your chapter is Shaking the Global Money Tree. What's that one about?
So I wrote the chapter on international finance and international financing. So both philanthropy and international funding of commercial activities that are, contributing to the destruction of the Amazon. So this was a chapter that I knew from my talks with Dom that he was the least set on. He wasn't really sure how he was going to handle it because it's very big and it can be very technical and there's a lot of ways you can go. I ended up going to the COP28 conference in Dubai because it just felt like the perfect encapsulation of, all of these contradictions that exist. You have this massive climate conference being held by a major oil and gas producer who's trying to prevent the end of oil and gas production. You have the beginning of the Lula government taking back from Bolsonaro, campaigning on these promises of ending the deforestation and being an environmental hero and, changing the way that the Bolsonaro government did it. But in the first months of the administration, you start to see that there's a lot of policies that they're doing that aren't really living up to their promises, including pushing to drill for oil in the Amazon. And just right now, there's a massive piece of legislation that is getting rid of environmental checks before you could do large projects, and they're not even pushing back against it. So, the Lula government's there. You have all these Amazonian activists and indigenous activists that are there trying to make their case. And then at the same time, you're seeing it butting up against the reality of the largest number of lobbyists for major industries there in the history of COP. And so it's this moment where you see why things are so difficult. One thing I'd like to say is that when you think about the Amazon, imagine you're using a zoom photo lens, and if you zoom in at a certain aperture, then everything, it's all really clear and it makes sense. This is so easy. We can solve this. You just have to do this one thing. And then you zoom into a different focal length, and suddenly it's all very complex and very challenging. And so what was interesting about this chapter was being able to take that big zoom out and go away from the Amazon after the whole book is taking place in the Amazon, and look at the people who are often, have the most power or could have the most power to prevent the devastations happening, because they're the ones with the money behind a lot of these operations.
What do you hope readers will take away from the book?
I hope that readers understand that this title, How to Save the Amazon, is an invitation to ask that question, to care about that question, because it is one of the most important and consequential questions in the world right now. So, Dom went about this book. That title was not supposed to be, I am going to step in there and I'm going to answer and solve all the problems. The original subtitle was Ask Those Who Know. He had spent a decade traveling around the Amazon, meeting people that were destroying it and people that were trying to save it and people that were, somewhere in the middle there. And he felt that there were already the seeds of what needed to happen taking place in different stages all over the place.
Dom was famed for a few different things here, but one of them, and I think what made him such a great journalist, was that he was such a good listener. And he was interested in listening to all kinds of people from all walks of life. One of the ironies, terrible ironies of what happened in 2022 is that the people who are accused of killing him are actually the kind of people that Dom would have sat down around a wooden table and tried to understand. The chapter I wrote, and going through his notebooks, I found conversations that he had had in the Yanomami Indigenous territory with illegal gold miners, with people who ran illegal businesses within the Indigenous territories. And he didn't judge them. He just wanted to listen to them and to understand why they were there, what they were doing, and what that told us about the situation. But I think I think a few of the books I have about the Amazon here give you such a powerful human telling from so many different remote places that most Brazilians even have frankly never heard of.
Andrew and Tom, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.